In 2008, the financial system was in disarray. Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson lobbied heavily for a $700 billion bailout called TARP that would help mortgage holders, and instead, the money went largely to the big banks. But George W. Bush made sure that $77 billion also went to bail out Chrysler and General Motors. Those funds were by law to be used for financial companies, which the two automakers obviously were not. The second swindle would come under Obama's watch when he forced the two companies into bankruptcy. Those who had lent money to Chrysler in the form of bonds would face a strong-armed intervention by the administration. To please the United Automobile Workers, they ended up with 33% more money than other creditors who should have been paid first. The point? The rule of law was violated to please a constituency. Well, the automaker's home of Detroit is in the news again. More muni defaults will come. And the question is, will the rule of law prevail, or will we see a repeat of the Banana Republic-style justice that prevailed in 2008 and 2009? Here to dig into the facts of this precedent-setting bankruptcy is Perry Ann.
The Motor City just became the largest bankrupt city in America. On Thursday, July 17th, Detroit's emergency city manager, Kevin Orr, filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy after failing to reach agreements with bondholders and creditors. Mr. Orr told citizens yesterday the city's services, for now, are unaffected. Police and fire departments will operate as usual.
Services will remain open, paychecks will be made, bills will be paid. Nothing changes from the standpoint of the ordinary citizen's perspective.
Municipal bankruptcy is a complicated process. Results depend on location and where proceedings occur. So let's dig into the fine print of municipal bankruptcies and how Detroit could be affected. Hearings for the city could take place in Detroit, Kentucky, Ohio, or Tennessee. The bankruptcy judge will be the one who determines this. First, an automatic stay will be issued on the city's obligations to halt creditors from collecting debts. This includes lawsuits against the city from pension officials and union members. The automatic stay will allow the city time to renegotiate its contracts. Then Detroit will have to meet eligibility requirements under Chapter 9. The first one is authority. The city will also have to prove that it's insolvent and has a desire to adopt a plan to adjust its debt. If the court grants Detroit the okay to move forward, the reorganization plan will have to be voted on by creditors. This bankruptcy could take an unknown amount of time for an agreement to be made. The city has around $18 billion of debt, making it the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history. Creditors range from secured bondholders, general obligation bondholders, unsecured creditors, and union and pension boards. A showdown of who will end up with what is sure to occur here. According to the Detroit News, Orr offered the city's unsecured creditors, including unions and pension funds, just 10 cents on the dollar. While at the same time, Orr reportedly agreed to pay two big banks, Bank of America and UBS, 75 cents on the dollar to settle financial claims. The unsecured creditors called this draconian and could not reach an agreement. Detroit has found itself in a vicious cycle of dwindling tax base, eroding public services, and population decline. In addition, crime is rising. But Detroit is not the only municipality with these problems. There have been 36 filings since 2010. This map, put together with data from Morningstar, shows 21 states that are not fiscally sound based on pensions. Many other cities in America have badly underfunded pensions. Detroit's case will be closely watched because Michigan's Constitution holds a clause that specifically bans cuts to retiree pensions and benefit payments. If Michigan is allowed to cut payments, this could set a precedent for other municipal bankruptcies around the country. Detroit has been called a huge test kitchen for municipal bankruptcy. Hopefully the fire in the kitchen can be put out before it spreads to the garage.
Joining me is RT producer Rachel Kurzius. Thank you for joining me on this latest Daily Duel.
Glad to be here.
All right, we've been talking Detroit, so let's just launch into the story. Detroit has become the largest city in the U.S. to file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy. However, a recent Michigan court ruling raised questions as to whether the bankruptcy will even stand up to court review. So, Rachel, if it does succeed for filing in a bankruptcy, who are the winners and the losers here?
Well, I think that's what's yet to be seen, Bob. I think the big reason why anyone files for bankruptcy, whether we're talking about an organization, a company, a city, or an individual, it's so that they can disperse some of their debt, right? So that they can, and I think that that's what we're waiting to see here with Detroit.
Organization or liquidation. Now, are we going to see a liquidation of city assets? Probably not. This is a Chapter 9 filing, and so it's a little bit different than if a company had declared this. And it's not as though the city's not going to have police workers and fire, and they're going to lose their fire trucks or whatever.
Sure, but at the same time, the question is whether they'll be able to pay them what they promised in terms of taking out money for their pensions out of their paychecks. Are they actually going to be able to fulfill the promise they made to them?
Well, no.
I think is a huge question. I mean, there are more than 100,000 creditors on that 16-page filing. So the question is, how is everyone going to see the money that they believe is owed to them?
Well, that's the problem. There's a lot of money being thrown around that supposedly that people are going to get someday. You and I both pay Social Security tax. Are we going to get it? Probably not. At least not to the degree that our parents have. But you know, if you can't pay your bills, you got to have a deleveraging at some time. And why not
now? You need
now?
to figure out a way to restructure in order to make sure you can pay what you owe to other people. The question is, who's going to be preferenced in this restructuring? Is it going to be financial institutions who have maybe paid out some money in advance, or is it going to be the civil servants who have been working for this city? We don't know. We also know that there's...
Well, we should know, because there's a preference of order in the bankruptcy court and in the law. The problem is that sometimes, as we saw in 2008 and 2009, as I was talking about earlier, these preferences are just changed, and the administration can force a bankruptcy court or force things through that people who are supposed to be paid more actually get paid less.
Right. So I think that's what the court is going to have to decide here. I mean, the judge recently ruled that this is not a constitutional bankruptcy filing. The AG promised that they are going to come back and appeal this. So I think we've got a lot to wait and see what happens.
Well, yes,
next.
it's definitely precedent setting, but like the main point is that there are waves and waves of defaults coming, and this is going to set a precedent for not only Michigan but other states. How is this going to be handled? We could even see, rioting in the streets. If
we could, I mean, I don't know if rioting is even the way to contextualize this, right? I think that a bigger civil disobedience that has been going on is that a lot of Detroit residents haven't been paying their taxes because they've been saying, listen, we haven't been getting the services owed to us for these taxes. We haven't been getting our utilities. We haven't been getting other things. So then it becomes this vicious cycle where how are they going to get their utilities if there's no tax money with which to pay these utility companies?
Well, there's an interesting precedent in Baltimore where they're trying to attract more immigrants in order to keep the city vibrant.
Yes, same in DeKalb in Georgia. That's the same question.
Well, should Detroit do that? But before they can do that, they have to cleanse out all this bad debt, and they can't restart without doing that first.
Right, and I think that in terms of cleansing, what we're seeing is these empty warehouses. Two things are happening with them. One, as hipsters are wont to do, a lot of hipsters are going into some of these warehouses and group houses and trying to do something with them. But at the same time, we're seeing, and especially under the national mortgage settlement, banks are actually getting some of their credit on the dollar back if they bulldoze some of these vacated homes.